Okay, so I'm over here. This is the landfill, Miramar landfill. You have to wait in line. They do random inspections for hazardous material. It's kind of like crossing the border, I guess. They want to make sure they minimize any kind of hazardous material being dumped into the landfill. And so they're randomly checking cars. And so yeah, it's kind of a long time to drop off stuff. And so yeah, I have a guy over there. He's kind of upset, and it reminds me of another time I came here. I was kind of paranoid by waiting in line. I was thinking they're after me, or they're trying to get me or something. And so before then, back then, I was having a much harder time. Now it's maybe I'm able. I don't know. I don't want to compare, but I was able to read something on the website. Just really, as I'm like waiting in line, I'm just reading it, because really that's kind of like the prompted feeling that I have to read something when it's really important. Because if I'm just reading something to read it, I don't feel like I could really read that much. So in waiting in line, I read that and I was like, oh, I think I remember last time I was here, I was kind of getting a little paranoid waiting in line, and kind of intensity. And more so like when I'm at the guy and he's like taking a look at me, and I'm just like, I remember feeling that. And I remember leaving on the way out, because I think I was coming to pick up some green compost that they make over here. And I remember that, how I was just kind of like relief as I was leaving, and kind of having a bit of a, a kind of like a panic feeling, kind of they're going to get me kind of feeling, or they're looking at me in a way that makes me feel like they're looking at me with like, are you going to do it? And so for someone with schizophrenia, I'm not taking medication either, so that's pretty difficult. Just the other day I was at the store, or I was at the junkyard, and some guy, he looked kind of out of place. He was filling up his water containers with water from the faucet right there, and I'm just like looking at him as he's filling up his container, leaving the water on, and he's taking one container out through the front. And I'm waiting in line to pay for my part, and I hear them talking about like that crazy guy over there, and then they were like talking between each other. They were saying, yeah, just act crazy, just make him more crazy. And just like, it made me think about times before when I went into the junkyard, or I was a little bit out of it, and kind of the way that people tend to treat you. And so having schizophrenia, going to the junkyard, I remember like I had this little bolt, and I thought it was like not such a big deal. Those items are free. They're so small. You don't really pay for those. They're just everywhere. And so I had this bolt, or like one or two bolts that I had with me. And the person at the register, he was like looking at me, and I thought he was just playing around. I thought he was kidding. And part of it though is that his like emotional tone, like, I have to pay for that. He even had the emotional tone of a sense of like, you don't have to pay for that kind of sense. And sometimes when I'm over there at the junkyard, they'll kind of give me stuff. They'll like, oh, just don't worry about it. You're paying for a whole bunch of other stuff. I'll just add in. They do that sometimes, especially if it's at the end and they just don't want to hassle counting up every single bolt. They'll just give it to me as one piece. And so I feel like that mentality maybe had bled through when he was kind of putting so much energy in questioning that I was taking this one or two bolts, or when I was asking him about those bolts. And so I remember I was leaving the junkyard, and as I'm leaving, like, they're saying shit, and they're making me feel like they're talking about me, like they're saying stuff about me, and they probably were. And so yeah, I was watching that guy. He was taking some water from the junkyard, from the faucet. It seemed like he was homeless, like he was living outside of his car, living out on the street and out of his car in front of the junkyard, because I mean, it's relatively industrial place. People tend to do that. And so I'm just like watching that guy, what he's doing, and he's like, he seems kind of intense about what he's doing. And I was just thinking about that, and just like, you know, he must be having it hard. and so much effort just for water. And so the employees, like as I'm waiting in line, they're talking a whole bunch of shit about him, like, oh, there's that crazy guy, he's coming in again, start acting crazy, make him go crazy so he doesn't come back. And one guy, the thing is, one of the employees where I really felt like I had to complain or make a report about it was one of the employees. He got a golf club and a golf ball, and he hit a golf ball in the direction of where that guy was walking towards his car. And that employee, he was just kind of like, that was out of line, that was way out of line. I mean, I feel like those employees, they just don't understand how hard it is when you're faced with things that are like, you're dealing with very difficult emotions where you feel a sense of like the world is against you. And also too, that area, they were doing a protest recently because they felt like they were being underpaid. And it's a lot more than that. Part of it is like disbelief in the vaccinations being effective and like kind of government conspiracy. So there's a lot of like, you know, under the surface kind of things that are at play there with that guy potentially being there as a homeless person. So I don't know, I feel like that was really bad. I felt like I wanted to complain, but you know, realistically, the employees, they don't know better. They have their assumptions about how they perceive what's going on and the solution to what's going to help them. But really, they're just employees. They're probably upset over, you know, the minimum wage that they make working at that job. They're just doing that just as a pastime to pass, you know, to add some content to their monotonous repetition of daily experience working at the junkyard. I mean, I would probably like that job, but after maybe years and years of doing it, I mean, sure, it probably pays more, but I mean, it's something it's not very stimulating. It's one of those jobs that is just kind of, you know, maybe you interact with people and that's a stimulating aspect of the job. Like I imagine a lot of retail jobs are that way. From my experience, that's what I'm kind of basing my idea of from. And so yeah, I just wanted to talk about this stuff. You know, seemingly everyday things, not really, you know, not really. There's more to it. So like, still there, yeah, he's still over there. He was in his car and he had just like drove off the side right there and parked there for a few minutes. And I noticed that a lot of stuff that was in his car, like he wasn't really dumping any stuff. And so he was probably having a hard time. Maybe he had some hazardous waste that he didn't know that was, you can't drop it off here at this part of the junkyard, and so maybe he turned him around for that reason. But he's pretty upset, and he kind of parked right there. I remember, actually, that's the thing, is I remember I was overwhelmed, and I remember I had pulled off to the side of the road and I just had parked there, and I was just overwhelmed. So I just like stopped, and I do that sometimes when I just feel like I'm at my maximum limit. I give myself some time to just sit down and just like kind of not focus on driving, because that just driving by itself, I remember when I first started driving, like I was the most stressed person that I knew of amongst everyone that I knew. I was the most stressed out when it comes to driving, and part of that I think had to do with my grandpa's mentality that he had towards driving. Very, very, very strict, very, very kind of very stressful mentality towards driving. And so he was actually a bodyguard, I guess, in like a second world country, and he had a job to protect government officials. So he kind of, I guess, he kind of passed that to me, that sense of prompted to alertness during the time of driving. It's a time of greater alertness that you have to put towards your driving. And so yeah, I just like that's funny. I vaguely remember that, just like pulling off to the side and just like staying there and just like, you know, I'm processing the feelings that I'm going through. I mean, the people are like talking to me a certain way, and part of what I do when I experience anger, which is different than I used to have a mentality towards anger previously, because I never really had any problems with anger in my life. And when I encountered an angry person, I usually kind of, it's something to kind of be afraid of. But now, having gone through so much emotional hardship on my own where I have to deal with anger, I kind of have I have a very different outlook towards those kind of feelings, rather than kind of looking down upon people that are angry and kind of looking at them with kind of maybe a sense of repulsivity and they're a certain way. I don't really see that anymore. So yeah, I feel, so that's it. This is my video. I almost went too far into the weight thing.